The Miami Heat begin their 2023 season tomorrow night against the Detroit Pistons. I'm fired up, but are you? And if you are fired up, show me by liking today's video. All right, this is the Heat Report. I am Nic Rohloff, and on today's show, we have a lot to talk about because we start with the Heat injury news going into that first game of the season at home against the Detroit Pistons. We talk about if the Heat have a Micky Arison problem. If you don't know who that is the owner of the Miami Heat. I think they do, and then we have a little Bam Adebayo extension talk at the end of the show, so stick around for that. But let's start with the injury news for the Miami Heat, and it starts with our main man, Barry Jackson. He might as well run the Heat Report if we're going to be honest. We're always talking about what Barry has to say. One of the best beat reporters in the game. But he said this afternoon that the Heat list Josh Richardson and Haywood Highsmith out for the opener against the Detroit Pistons. It makes sense, to be honest. Haywood Highsmith suffered that knee sprain in the last preseason game, right before the last preseason game. So we knew he was going to be out for a couple weeks. The Josh Richardson part, this was expected. After dealing with foot injuries the entire preseason and training camp, it just kept on bothering him. And then he played on last Wednesday, against the Brooklyn Nets and left the game after re-aggravating that foot injury once more. And then once he re-aggravated the injury, we basically knew that he was going to have to take some time off. He's still been practicing, getting some participation, but we knew that he was not going to be ready for game action to start the season against the Pistons. So with all that being said, our starting lineup on night one is going to look like this. You're going to have 37-year-old Kyle Lowry starting at the 1. You're going to have Tyler Herro in the backcourt alongside Jimmy Butler, emo Jimmy on screen for you, and then Bam Adebayo. But now, after Lowry's officially starting, and then after we're going to talk about Calb Martin here in a second, but Kevin Love is going to be your starting power forward for the game against the Pistons. And you might ask yourself, well, how do I know that Kevin Love is going to be the starter? Well, Calb Martin basically told us earlier this morning. He said that he told reporters that he's going to likely be used off the bench. He is still getting bothered a little bit with that knee soreness. He's been dealing with that the entire training camp, entire preseason. He played a little bit of minutes against the Rockets in the Heat's preseason finale, but he is not going to be full throttle for the game against the Pistons. He'll probably get 15 to 18 minutes off the bench rather than 25 to 30, which he probably would have got. I don't know if he would have started, but he would have definitely been in the closing lineup for Miami. We'll see who closes for the Heat now, but it doesn't sound like Martin is going to be ready to go, and maybe that is a pathway for the 18th overall pick, Jaime Jaquez Jr., to be able to go for the Heat. He hasn't played since the first Heat preseason game against the Charlotte Hornets. Why? Groin injury. And groin injuries are tricky because they get re-aggravated very, very easily. So it's tough for the medical doctors and the team personnel to make the decision on if they want to give Jaquez minutes or just keep on letting him rest. But it sounds like after a couple good days of practice and not being listed on the injury report today by the Miami Heat, he is going to likely be able to go, and I expect him to be that 7th, 8th man off the bench for Miami. Calb Martin's probably still going to be the 6th man. Then you got Duncan, Thomas Bryant, and then Jaquez Jr. and Nikola Jovic will be thrown in that bench mix. We'll see how the bench shakes up tomorrow evening. A lot of fluidness with this Heat rotation considering they already got hit with the injury bug, and we aren't even in game 1 of 82. But you saw the starting lineup just a bit ago. It's going to be Kyle Lowry, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, and Bam Adebayo. I want you to grade the Heat starting lineup for opening night. Scale it for me 1 to 10. Let me know in the comment section. Before we get to prize picks, what I'm telling you about just in a second, I'll give it a 6.5. I don't love that Kevin Love and Kyle Lowry starting, but those other three, those are good players. Speaking of prize picks, we are sponsored by Prize Picks. And if you love sports, you have to head over to the good old Prize Picks. They're the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America and is available to play in 31 states. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for first deposit match up to $100. You see my selections for opening night tonight when you have Suns, Warriors, Lakers, Nuggets, and then I also threw in a little selection for tomorrow's games as well. They're running a cool promo for more than Steph Curry, half a point, so I'll take the free pick. Thanks, Prize Picks. You can too. But I also took more than LeBron James, 6.5 assists. He's also someone who comes out of the gates passive early on in the season. I expect him to distribute tonight. And then Bruce Brown, 4 rebounds. He is going to make a big-time mark on that Pacers team. But another positive of Prize Picks is that they allow quick withdrawals and have easy gameplay with an enormous selection of players and stat types, which make playing DFS so much fun. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Shout out Prize Picks. I'm going to have so much fun playing them all season long. But do the Heat have a problem? And what is that problem, you ask? It might be their owner, Micky Arison. And I do want to give him credit before I go bash him completely. And Tim Reynolds of the AP had this report today, but as we go into the 23 season, Miami's tax bill, if it was due today, which it's not, it would be $29 million, and that's on top of $180 million in payroll, which is the 6th highest in the NBA. So you might ask yourself, what could I possibly be complaining about? Well, Bradley Beal shedded some light on a situation with his offseason. He said, so my initial favorite was Miami. It's a shot in the heart already, because he's obviously playing for the Suns. And so we call Miami. Pat Riley says, we'll go and talk to Mickey and figure it out. I'm like, okay, what's Miami doing? They're dragging feet. They're taking a little bit. And eventually, I was like, dang, that was my spot. It was an eye-opener for sure. And that's what I said going in everything, open-minded with an open slate. And out of nowhere, here comes the dark horse in the Phoenix Suns, and their aggressiveness pushed me over the top. This is not something I want to hear. Another star player in the NBA wants to join the Miami Heat, and they can't get it done. You had Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, specifically tell you that you wanted to be a member of the Miami Heat, and the front office couldn't get it done. I don't put a ton of blame on the Heat front office for the Damian Lillard situation. That obviously seemed like there was a disconnect between that deranged bald man in Portland, which I don't want to even speak his name. It's like Beetlejuice. Don't even say his name. They don't want him to appear. But with the Bradley Beal situation is certainly disappointing. It's also been on record, and Pat Riley confirmed the report, that the Heat had a serious concern with Bradley Beal's no-trade clause. And Beal had refused to waive his no-trade clause if he was traded to the Heat. So the situation is, if the Heat made a move for Bradley Beal, they would have been able to renegotiate that contract a little bit and have Bradley Beal drop his no-trade clause. Well, Beal did not want to do that, and that scared Miami off because his contract is rather large, and with a no-trade clause, the Heat could have been stuck paying that bill 3 to 4 or 5 years down the line if he turned bad, or they just wanted to move on from him. So this is more on Micky Arison not being able and willing to potentially bite that bullet 4 or 5 seasons down the line. And that's what stinks, because I don't think you would have had to trade Bradley or Tyler Hero for Bradley Beal. Because when you look at what the Wizards got back, they got Chris Paul, or they traded Chris Paul. Wait, now I'm getting confused. I don't even fucking know what's going on anymore. Jordan Poole, that's right. Mixed up my trades. Disaster class from Nic Rohloff. Jordan Poole went to the Suns and then rerouted. But anyway, hectic trade. Back on track. Get the motor and drive over here, Rolly. Struggle bus. But Micky Arison electing not to be taking that risk hurt the Heat. Because you could have had Bradley Beal handling the rock as the one, as he will do in Phoenix, with Tyler Hero as the backcourt running mate and Jimmy and Bam in the front court. That is a loaded four-man rotation, and the Heat bypassed it because they were concerned about paying more tax dollars and concerned about that no-trade clause in Beal's contract. It is very, very disappointing to not see the Heat take advantage of another star player specifically request a trade to the Heat, even if it wasn't made available to the public. I did mention that Heat versus Pistons game tomorrow, and we will be live for that game with a nice little watch party, if you will. This is the thumbnail. We'll be live 15 to 30 minutes prior to tip-off, so make sure you join. If you see this thumbnail on your YouTube page or on the internet, click on it, join us. We'll be drinking, we'll be partying, and hopefully watching the Heat go to 1-0 on the 23-24 NBA season. But now I want to talk about Bam Adebayo, the Heat's anchor, now that Udonis Haslem has really left the team, and he didn't sign an extension, and the deadline was last night at 11:59. And here is what Barry Jackson had to say. Per a person directly involved, Bam Adebayo, as expected, he added, bypassed signing a 2-year, $97 million extension by the deadline last night because he could become eligible for a Supermax extension next summer. He's already signed through 25 and 26. And I saw a lot of Heat fans freak out that Bam didn't sign an extension with the Miami Heat. Could it be signaling for him to be wanting to leave the 305 in the next couple years? Don't freak out. If you remember what I just read off there at the end of that tweet, he is eligible to sign a 4-year, $245 million Supermax extension if he meets certain criteria this upcoming season. So Bam is just holding out 1 year, trying to qualify for those Supermax numbers and get a long-term 4-year extension done with the Heat. And the Heat should absolutely do that. There should be no concerns about paying Bam Adebayo. You drafted him. He's homegrown. He's a top 5 defender on the planet, if not number 1, like I think. He's also improving his offensive game every single year. I think he's going to average 22, 23 this year. He's improved his mid-range. If Bam Adebayo makes an All-NBA or All-NBA defensive team, that's how he meets those Supermax extension requirements. Maybe we'll go full in depth on what Bam would have to do to get there in a different video, but I am not personally concerned about Bam Adebayo because he wants to stay with Miami, as of now at least, and he just wants to hold out to get a bigger extension. But are you concerned about Bam not signing an extension with the Heat? 2 years, $97 million. I'd rather hold out for the 4 years, $245 myself, so I don't blame number 13 for anything he is doing. That's going to do it for today's show. Like I mentioned, make sure you join us for our watch party tomorrow evening. It's going to be a blast. Subscribe, the whole 9 yards. We cover the Heat better than anyone else. And now that the regular season is fully underway, if you want to stay in touch with your Miami Heat better than anyone else, join the channel.